Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, demanding immigration reform, the show of support from San Diego to save parents and children from deportation.
And several Republican presidential hopefuls are in San Diego for a closed-door convention. I'm Peggy Pico with the mission of the event and who's opposed to it. Also ahead, firefighters may be allowed to destroy drones that interfere with emergency efforts. What drives drone operators and how CAL FIRE is pushing back.
I think everyone who comes to Balboa Park would consider it to be the crown jewel, even though the crown is tarnished and probably a few jewels are missing.
Some TLC for a neglected crown jewel, the plan to help Balboa Park shine for another 100 years. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. A show of unity today by the San Diego City Council with a unanimous vote to support deferred deportation programs for some immigrants. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero joins us with the story.
The resolution supports executive action programs called DACA and DAPA, which would defer deportations for some children and parents living in the U.S. illegally. They're currently stalled in a federal appeals court after 26 states, led by Texas, sued to stop them. The resolution also calls on Congress to reform what San Diego City Council members call the nation's broken immigration system. Councilwoman Marty Emerald says adding San Diego's voice to the national debate on DACA and DAPA is important because the city has the world's busiest border crossing.
So we're just asking Congress, please, let's defer action against families. Let's stop breaking families up until we fix our broken immigration system.
Nearly 100,000 people in San Diego are expected to benefit from the programs. Some of them spoke during the public comment period. Critics also shared their thoughts, saying San Diego doesn't have the resources to support so many immigrants. The cities of Chula Vista and Lemon Grove recently approved similar resolutions. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Paying for health care in California with a new tax. Governor Jerry Brown proposed a plan to charge health plans with a flat tax of nearly $8 per person every month. It's expected to raise more than $1 billion. Critics say it could have devastating effects on state businesses. The legislature is also looking at how to qualify for federal funds for Medi-Cal. When it comes to the health of children, a new report shows California ranks 38th in the country. From our North County Bureau, KPBS reporter Kenny Goldberg says the Kids Count report gives California low marks in a number of areas.
The annual report from the Annie E. Casey Foundation uses 16 different indicators of child well-being. These include the teen birth rate and the percentage of kids in single-parent families. California ranks just above Mississippi in terms of economic indicators. That's because of the high percentage of children living in poverty and the high percentage of kids whose parents lack secure employment. The report shows California has made progress in children's health, primarily due to the expansion of the Medi-Cal program. The state is also taking steps to improve education by increasing the number of preschool spots for poor children. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
The paychecks for top executives at Cal State campuses will get a little bigger starting this month. That's when a 2% pay raise kicks in. Some faculty union members opposed it. San Diego UT says San Diego State University President Elliot Hirschman is the highest paid president in the system. The raise brings his salary to $420,000 a year. Water rates will jump twice next year if San Diego water officials get their way. They are asking for a 9.8% increase in January, then a nearly 7% rate hike 6 months later. The Water Department blames it on the drought. The city is paying more for the water it buys from the County Water Authority, and customers are using less water, so the city is taking in less money. A council committee will review the proposal next month. San Diego water customers have been conserving since the governor ordered mandatory cutbacks in June. We lowered our water use by 24% last month, but as I recently discovered, it's never too early to teach the little ones about the importance of our fragile water supply.
Just shake it a little bit. Shake it. Make sure your thumb is over the... Put it over the table, okay, guys?
Like budding water scientists, these kids are testing the chlorine content of San Diego's H2O.
Everybody take a deep breath.
They're also learning about the natural watershed and how it flows from the mountains to the ocean, feeding plants and sea life. So what do we do if we see pollution in the water? What should we do?
We could get in a boat and drive up and get it.
And clean it up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum in Escondido, where kids can explore the aquaponics garden featuring live plants and fish. See how the water table changes when it's clogged or blocked using brightly colored Legos as debris. Lindy Villa with the museum says they challenge the kids to come up with a water savings plan at home. She says it made a big splash with one kid who became known as the water police.
So when his sisters were brushing their teeth and they left the tap on, he would say, "Stop, you're wasting water." And he would go and he'd turn off the faucet.
The new state water restrictions limit outdoor irrigation to 2 days a week, before 10 in the morning and after 6 in the evening, with only 5-minute watering sessions. San Diegans have done a good job conserving water in May and June, but the hot summer months have just begun, and we can't let up, just like the little water policeman.
Awesome. Let's put the cap on.
While most of the state is under a 25% water reduction, San Diego faces only a 16% cut to reward us for being ahead of other cities on conservation. The need for a major firefighting tool has county supervisors looking to the White House for help. They voted unanimously today to get President Obama's administration to allow at least one air tanker from the U.S. Forest Service to operate out of the Ramona Airport during wildfire season, instead of having them fly from San Bernardino, where they are based. Supervisors say that location is too far. They added the Ramona airfield is set up and ready to go.
CAL FIRE demonstrated with the same aircraft that it can, with a load, land and take off at the Ramona Air Base.
By having those tankers stationed in Ramona, I think we all know what it really means is gives us greater capacity in time of need to fight the fires.
Fire experts say the move would allow for 8 additional drops per day on wildfires in San Diego County. You could call it an attack on the drones. That's after the unmanned devices grounded firefighting efforts at 2 separate wildfires in San Bernardino County. Peggy Pico explains the plan to get them out of the way.
Fire officials say drone aircraft interfered in firefighting efforts during 2 devastating fires last week. First, a drone temporarily grounded firefighting aircraft in the lake fire near Big Bear. Then, on Friday, officials say several drones delayed firefighter response in the I-15 fire near Cajon Pass, where 20 vehicles were destroyed. Here with more on drones and fire response are my guests, CAL FIRE's Kendall Bortizer and Larry Hinman, Professor Emeritus at the University of San Diego. And Kendall, specifically, what kind of problems do drones cause when somebody's trying to fight a fire?
Well, essentially, it comes down to the fact that if a drone encounters one of our aircraft, it can take the aircraft down. We're reminded in 2009 of the commercial airliner on the Hudson River that was brought down because it hit a group of birds. A drone would have a catastrophic effect on a helicopter or a fixed-wing aircraft in the event that they were to collide.
Now, are these drone encounters, Kendall, are they isolated incidences, or do they seem to be a lot more of them, and are they kind of trending across the country?
Yeah, we saw a few of them last year, but we're certainly seeing more of them now because they're so readily available. You can buy them for $40 on the internet all day long, so everybody's buying them.
Now, during last week's lake fire, CAL FIRE tweeted out this message, and I want to read it correctly here. Tonight, a hobby drone grounded firefighting aircraft by flying over the lake fire. When you fly, we can't. It puts our pilots' lives at risk. So, Larry, why are some drone users actually captivated by filming wildfires or devastation if they know it can put people at risk?
Well, I assume most of them just don't think about the risks that it incurs for those fighting the fires, and it's just exciting to them, you know. And one of the challenges is to get them to see the possible terrible consequences of their actions.
Now, what about the ideas? Are these mostly hobbyists, do you think, or is this the idea? Is news media playing into this?
Well, right now, I think they're primarily hobbyists, though CBS did contact one of the, drone pilots to see if it could obtain video of the Cajon fire. So, and you see the future. It's not far away. Where paparazzi now use drones instead, and these are just going to be ubiquitous.
Sure. Well, in response to the drone interference in the fires in this past week, state lawmakers actually introduced a bill that would allow drones to be destroyed or disabled by first responders. So, Larry, let me ask you this: if these drones are getting in the way, is legislation the answer to fixing the problem?
Well, I think legislation is part of the answer. I mean, the first part, I think, is simple. The education, getting the word out to all these people. And then the second part is having some regulatory structure, which we're just in the process of articulating. Legislation, and particularly punitive measures, sort of are the last resort when everything else has failed.
And Kendall, what advice would you, if you were front to front with, let's just say at this point, hobby drone users, what would you say to them as a firefighter?
Well, essentially, no drones over fire zones. And just exactly what you had said. If you're flying, we can't. It will ground our aircraft. Our planes are flying at 120 knots, and an encounter would be devastating. So we have grounded all of our aircraft anytime we see any drones in the area.
And it seems like you were using social media. CAL FIRE is anyway sending out these tweets and other various things. So how are you getting that message out?
Yeah, well, that's one way we're doing it. And Larry brought up a great point when we were just doing the radio, is that starting at the elementary school level, I mean, we're actively involved in the communities doing fire safety programs, community education. This is one more element that now we're going to have to add to the elementary schools and talk to kids about it, because it's becoming quite popular.
Yeah, I knew you had something to say on that, Larry.
And that's one more element of a larger picture of helping kids become aware of the unintended consequences of very alluring technology. And we've been fighting that battle with texting for quite a while.
Yeah, we saw the poster of Smokey the Bear with a drone, which I just love, moving forward on that. But Kendall, we have to end on this. Are drones, do you see drones being used by firefighters?
I know they're being used throughout the nation by different fire agencies. I think they have a real specific purpose. I know the media is looking at using them, and as of right now, CAL FIRE is not utilizing them. Certainly with the way technology is advancing, perhaps one day down the road we may find the need for them. But the bottom line is, when we're flying our aircraft, even if we are utilizing, we're not going to be flying drones in the area. We just can't have that. It's too dangerous.
All right. Kendall Bortieser and Larry Hinman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
An ominous warning at the climate change conference in Vatican City. Governor Jerry Brown says the world may have already gone over the edge on global warming. Today, he joined the call from dozens of mayors and state leaders demanding action on climate change.
We have fierce opposition and blind inertia, and that opposition is well financed. Hundreds of millions of dollars going into propaganda, into falsifying the scientific record, bamboozling people of every country.
The governor has made climate change a central theme of his administration. He's backing a plan on what may be the most aggressive carbon reduction benchmark in North America. Changing attitudes while competing for gold. Almost 500 athletes and coaches from the Special Olympics are in town, getting ready for the first World Games in the U.S. in 16 years. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler caught up with one of them.
I kind of have sort of a competitive spirit.
Special Olympics athlete James Walker takes a break at the USO's Neil Ashe Airport Center at Lindbergh Field. Like any other Olympic athlete, he wants a gold medal. But Walker says the Special Olympics is about a lot more than medals.
Wherever we go, no matter what team we're on, we always treat ourselves with high respect.
The star-studded opening ceremonies on July 25th at the LA Coliseum. These athletes are going to join more than 6,000 other athletes from 165 countries and go for gold. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
The list of repairs in Balboa Park keeps growing. Paint is chipping, there's mildew and dry rot. KPBS reporter Angela Caron says a conservancy is also trying to raise money for those projects.
Good afternoon.
Back in 2010, Mayor Jerry Sanders stood in Balboa Park and announced a new plan for the future of the 1,200-acre park.
We're here to announce the next steps in an important initiative to ensure Balboa Park, San Diego's cultural heart and the crown jewel of our park system for the past 95 years, retains its magnificence into the second century.
Sanders unveiled the Balboa Park Conservancy, a nonprofit that would be the city's partner in taking care of the park.
The city simply doesn't have the resources to provide the level of care that this magnificent park deserves.
As a model, San Diego looked to New York City, where a conservancy raised millions and transformed Central Park.
Their first project was an ambitious one, to restore the sheep meadow to its former glory.
The idea is that a conservancy can raise private dollars from donors for park projects, something the city can't do.
It really worked.
The conservancy hired Tomas Herrera-Mischler earlier this year to be its first CEO.
Municipal work can go only so far sometimes. I mean, there are a lot of limitations to how public dollars can be spent. So having the ability to bring some private dollars into a project can be really transformational.
What gets transformed by the Conservancy may not always be the most pressing issue facing the park. The water main system is 100 years old and needs to be overhauled. But the Conservancy's first big fundraising campaign is for the restoration of the Botanical Building. Carol Littlejohn Chang is president of the Conservancy's board. She says starting with the iconic Botanical Building was a no-brainer.
We knew that would be appealing to private donors. We don't feel as sanguine about the fact that a sewer is particularly appealing to a private donor.
The goal is to raise $3 million for the Botanical Project. Chang says they've raised about $500,000 so far. The money will be used to fix the roof, add lights, and to restore the building to the way it was in 1915. As for that pesky water main system,
it has urgency to be addressed. And I think it's top of mind for many organizations in the park appropriately, and it's certainly top of mind for us.
The Conservancy has a lot on their plate, dealing with a long list of deferred maintenance, making the park more drought tolerant, saving trees. Herrera-Mischler, who led the Olmsted Parks Conservancy in Buffalo, started July 1st. He doesn't seem worried about the long to-do list.
I've been dealing with historic landscapes for a long time, and they're never done. You always have something you need to do, especially landscapes are living. They're changing all the time. Plants grow, they die, they change, and so there's always a lot of very careful thinking that has to go into every project. That's why, you know, we can't rush into any project. It has to be very carefully thought through.
Some say the Conservancy needs to speed things up. It's been around for 5 years and doesn't have much to show for it.
I think that's legitimate as a comment. My response back to it would be that we took some time, obviously, to organize. We didn't exist.
She says they had to build relationships with park leaders. This is tricky because each organization is also courting donors. Another kid on the fundraising block is not always welcome.
Look at this tower. The paint is peeling. The stucco is coming off.
One of the most vigilant guardians of the park's future is Mike Kelly, who runs the Committee of 100, a preservation group.
And it doesn't look the same, and the paint doesn't adhere the same.
He charts every crack in every building, and there are a lot of them. He has high hopes for the Conservancy and will be watching their every move. Public officials often call Balboa Park the city's crown jewel. You might call Kelly the keeper of the crown.
I think everyone who comes to Balboa Park would consider it to be the crown jewel, even though the crown is tarnished and probably a few jewels are missing.
Chang and Herrera-Mischler say the Conservancy is the key to preserving that crown long into the future. Angela Caron, KPBS News.
This just into our newsroom, a stretch of the 10 freeway where the last summer storm washed out a bridge between Coachella and the Arizona border will reopen Friday. The LA Times reports one lane will be open in each direction. If you recall, on Sunday, 30 feet of the eastbound lanes washed away. One driver had to be rescued. Political games playing out in San Diego with a high-profile convention kicking off this week. Peggy Pico explains why here and what critics are doing about it.
The American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, is a conference made up of conservative politicians and lobbyists with a stated goal of hammering out policy position. Attending this year's event in San Diego are Republican presidential hopefuls Governor Scott Walker, Senator Ted Cruz, and former Governor Mike Huckabee. Here with more on the event and opposition to it are my guests, San Diego County Democratic Party Chair Francine Busby and Ron Nearing, Vice Chair of San Diego County's Republican Party. And Francine, why is the Democratic Party involved with protests against ALEC this week?
Well, it's actually larger than the Democratic Party. However, the protest for two reasons. One is ALEC is an organization where corporations spend tens of thousands of dollars to come and be in the same room with legislators who they host there, and they actually hand them legislation that's ready-made, prefab to take home to their state houses and to enact. And there is no visibility, there's no accountability or transparency as lobbyists normally would have. And so it's just a lack of transparency and democracy.
And so, Ron, how would you respond to that? First of all, are you attending this year's conference?
I am. I'm one of the speakers at a training session. It sounded like Francine just described how the Senate and the Assembly Democratic caucuses work, because they meet in private. They meet with lobbyists all the time. They meet with lobbyists behind closed doors. So, I don't know how this is all that different than how the Democrats who are running Sacramento operate.
Do you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. The Democrats, when they meet with lobbyists, there are rules about transparency. There are no gifts. There have to be reporting. ALEC actually pays tens of thousands of dollars, or the corporations pay to come there. ALEC is a nonprofit charitable organization that does education. But in fact, they are highly influential to these for these legislators, and the kind of legislation they're passing should be daylighted.
Sure. So let me ask you the goal, Ron, of this event. What is the goal of this event? Is it to pass legislation?
Well, typically what this is an annual meeting of legislators from around the country, bipartisan group of legislators, Democrats, Republicans, etc., who get together and share ideas, best practices, what's happening in their respective states. So there'll be a lot of talk about the focus of ALEC is on economic and individual liberty issues. The economy is a major issue. That'll be the bulk of the discussion that takes place here. ALEC puts out a wonderful publication every year called Rich States, Poor States. That's an analysis of how each state is doing economically, both in terms of its condition and its outlook. It's information like that people on the left don't particularly like to hear, and so that's why you have some protests going on about that type of thing.
Well, let me get to the bigger picture here, though, and I'll start with you, Ron, and then Francine, where does groups like ALEC fit into the political process? Do you think they should be part of the political process?
Well, of course. We have a constitution which preserves the freedom of assembly, which protects the freedom of assembly, so that people can get together and share their ideas and so on. And sometimes they get together and the media is not invited. When I was running for lieutenant governor and I did editorial board meetings around the state, nobody else was invited to those meetings, and yet substantive issues were being discussed and bills were being discussed, legislation and so on.
Let me get Francine's take on this. First, Francine, also, where does it fit in the political process? And also, aren't there liberal groups that are similar to this, that hold conventions and meetings like this to discuss political policy?
102 corporations have dropped their affiliation with ALEC. One of them was Google, and Eric Schmidt came out and said that because of their denial of climate change, he said they're basically lying to people. And it's not just this benign group of people coming together. These are people with agendas. We have people who are climate deniers. You have people who are injecting chemicals into the ground and don't want liability. You've got stand your ground gun laws.
Do liberals have a similar group that meets for their agenda items?
I think that there are groups that meet, but I certainly don't think that there's a 40-year history of this cozy relationship between huge moneyed interest and legislators that are spoon-fed and take it back all over the country.
And your response?
First, the legislators who run Sacramento, the Democrats, meet privately with lobbyists all the time. They'll meet behind closed doors. They don't invite the media. They don't invite anyone else. And they have millions of dollars that are exchanging hands every day, every year. In addition to that, the left does have a group. It's called the State Information Exchange, or SIX, that was formed directly to be their version of ALEC and is conducting itself in not all that dissimilar a manner. Look, legislators are going to get together. They're going to share ideas. They're going to share best practices, and they're all going to be held accountable by their voters back home. These are all legislators who attend the ALEC meetings or elected by their constituents.
Let me bring this back locally. Francine, has Mayor Faulkner responded to your request to not attend this conference, or will he be attending?
We have not had a response from him. It's my understanding he is attending, and we really object. We've asked him not to because he portrays himself as a moderate Republican, and we feel that ALEC, represented by Mike Huckabee, Governor Walker, and these others are extreme Republicans. Governor Walker's passed 20 different ALEC bills, and their agenda is not in sync with San Diego's.
Well, we have to end it, but I do want to get a response from you, Ron. Do you happen to know if the mayor here in San Diego will be attending?
I don't know, but I certainly hope that he does. I think that the mayor's done a great job recovering from all the damage done by Democrat Mayor Bob Filner, and Kevin Faulkner has done a wonderful job ensuring that meetings are coming to San Diego and that we're bringing business to San Diego. I think it's a good thing to have meetings and conferences taking place in San Diego, whether it's ALEC or whether it's Comic-Con or anyone else.
All right, Ron Nearing and Francis Busby, thank you so much.
Thank you.
He's getting ready for his final curtain call. Public radio host Garrison Keillor of A Prairie Home Companion retires next year, and his successor is from San Diego. Keillor, seen here on the right in the tux, has hosted the show since 1974 with about 4 million listeners tuning in weekly. He kicks off a farewell tour on Sunday. He named Oceanside native Chris Teeley to take over the reins. Teeley is a master mandolin player and a member of the band Nickel Creek. He has a solo concert in San Diego in November. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.